Rev up your engines!
Dale McCartney says, Scotty, what are your hopes of the upcoming midterm elections? Anyone you want to see replaced? Well, I'd basically like to see them all replaced. I met politicians on all sides, left, right, middle, and as far as I was concerned, I didn't like any of them because they were just salesmen, and usually whoever they were being the spokesman, the salesman for, they're the ones behind operating the strings. They're like puppets. You got to find who the puppet master is, right? So I'd say all of them. There's only one problem with that. Decades ago, my father said to me, I kind of agreed. We lived in New York State, and he said, I kind of agree with these guys. Hey, we should get these guys out in New York. They're a bunch of crooked politicians. For a while, a few things changed. They got rid of some of them, and then years later, my father said, well, so much for that idea. Yeah, we got rid of the crooked people who were in there, and we got even more crooked people to take their place. Who's going to go to the hassle of politics unless they're getting something for nothing? When I lived in Texas, people were spending over $1 million to get elected to be a state senator. The pay is like $20,000 a year. It makes no sense. Just shows you the graft and corruption that's built into the system. Unfortunately, the system is corrupt. I can't see much change in it myself. If you remember when Clinton got elected the first time, there was that one guy that was a friend of his. He got in Washington, thought things were going to change. A short time later, the guy killed himself. He committed suicide because he saw, this is so corrupt, we can't change any of this stuff. It's unfortunate, but that's kind of the level that we're at. Just thank goodness that there's still a lot of Americans like me and you viewers out there that will keep doing your job regardless of what those clowns in Washington are doing. Or the clowns in your own legislature in your own states. They're just as clowny. It's just power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. So the lower level ones aren't corrupted as much, but the higher they go, from my experience, and I've met all kinds of people, hardly any of them impressed me at all. They were just running for whoever was giving them the bucks in the back pocket. Cool Buddy 28 says, Scotty, what do you think of a Honda S2000 2.2 as the first car? Those are excellent cars. They're a little sports car, and when they first came out, they had like the same or more horsepower than a 911 non-turbo Porsche, and they're just a four-cylinder naturally aspirated engine. Honda makes great engines. Here's the one problem. They stopped making them, and now they're starting to go woo in price. Everybody wants one. Ones I used to see you could pick up for 10, they're now 30, 40, 50,000 bucks and up. Now, they're excellent vehicles and they keep their value. There's no arguing that. And they can run quite well, but you're talking about buying say it's a 2002 or something. You're talking about a 21-year-old car. In that case, have a guy like me check it out before you buy it. Lots of stuff could go wrong buying a used sports car. Guys tend to beat the heck out of them. If you do find one, pray it's a middle-aged guy or an older guy that isn't going to beat it as much. KRBO says, how do I maintain my AC compressor? My mechanic said to turn it off before I shut the car off. You can. That really doesn't do anything. Back in the day, that was true, but we're talking 1960s. Today, all cars have relays in them. The AC system has a relay. When you start the car, it will not send power to the air conditioning compressor yet. The relays keep all that from happening. They send the energy to start the car. Once the car started, the air conditioner will come on. So that's not really going to do any damage. To maintain your compressor, main thing is make sure it's always full of refrigerant. If it's working cold all the time, it's fine. No worries, right? The other thing is make sure that your condenser is clean and not full of bugs. Realize your AC condenser, it looks like a radiator. It's in front of the car radiator. The radiator is here for the car. In front of that is a condenser. Bugs get on it in the summer, especially if you drive at night and they're attracted by the lights. They'll clog it up. You won't get any airflow. The pressure will be too high in the compressor end. And of course, always check your fans when you have it running. Turn the car on, open hood, make sure if you got two cooling fans, they're both running. Because if only one runs and not the other, then it will run slightly hotter and the compressor will burn out faster. Those are the main things. A Soft Waffle says, how do we know if a computer is programmed wrong? Well, since this is a car talk, I'm assuming you're talking about car computers. If it's programmed wrong, it won't run right. It might get bad gas mods. The engine might ping when you accelerate. You might get check engine lights with weird codes that make no sense. If it was reprogrammed, or if you bought a new computer and had to have it programmed to fit your car, that would be an obvious sign. Sometimes they'll start harder. You'll get weird warning lights, like it'll say theft system, even though your car runs and starts okay. You get weird stuff like that if it wasn't programmed correctly. It's not that easy to program cars these days. There's so many different programs available, and of course most of it's done online, so it's over the air. And a lot of times something screws up between the mainframe that you're getting it from and your computer or your your laptop, if you're using a laptop to reprogram it, it can get really complicated, and it can be reprogrammed wrong. I've seen it. Donnie says, Scotty, what's the lubricant you use on your wipers, rubber trim, etc.? It really depends on what you want. The absolute best thing that I found is a company that's called Lithium. And they make all kinds of cleaners and sealers. They make the best ones. They make a special one that's just for rubber. You get that. If you want to do the plastic, you get their plastic one. They make really good cleaners for that. Now, let's say you got silicone wiper blades, right? Well, you can get special silicone treatment cleaners that clean those. And if you do use silicone wiper blades, get the quality ones. Clean your windshield with windshield cleaner. Then you add this little silicone additive on it, buff it in a couple of times so that it'll work best if you do have silicone wiper blades. If they're just rubber, get the Lithium one for rubber. And a Lithium, Lithium, just like the Element. They make cleaners. They're very expensive, but they work really well. And you get a big bottle. If you don't spill it like me knocking it over, because I'm getting old, I forget and I kick them over and spill a bunch. If you don't spill it, it'll generally last you years and years and years. It doesn't take much to clean them with. Syed says, Scotty, my Toyota Allion always shows a quart more oil in a dipstick. It was at ground level and the coolant level's fine. Start with this. First thing you want to do is drain a little oil out until the dipstick stays just at the full line at the top, the full line. See what happens. It should just stay there because somebody's probably overfilling it when they change the oil. On the other hand, you say the coolant's okay, right? If you're losing coolant, the coolant will fill and then it'll make the level go higher, but then it would get like a milkshake. It'd be foamy because the water would mix with the oil, so you'd recognize that. Make sure car runs at a good temperature, doesn't have any serious problems, and that the oil's draining back down. Put it to the level, just the full level, not a quart above. And driving around, the next day you see it's too high, it's not draining down. And in that case, I would advise to do a motor flush. Could be the drains are clogged, it's not draining back down. Do a motor flush. You can use that ATS my friend Bernie makes in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's phenomenal stuff. You pour it in the engine oil, rev it up to about 1,600, 1,800 RPM for 20 minutes. The fan in front of your car to keep it cool. Then you change the oil and filter. It'll flush any crud out. Could be the returns are stuck in it's not draining back down, so you would want to do that. Normally, it's just somebody put too much oil in it, though. Glitch TTG says, Scotty, what's your opinion on a 2001 BMW Convertible? Interestingly enough, I just did a video this morning. My grandson bought an 87 BMW Convertible from the original owner who was 83 years old. That thing runs like a top. Now, the 2001 is relatively different. The 87, everything's metal. The bumpers are metal. And the intake manifold, the top of the engine is metal, aluminum. It's not plastic. A 2001 BMW Convertible has an amazing amount of plastic parts that are going to break and go bad, and they generally are endless money pits. I wouldn't touch a 2000, but that 87, he got a deal. He picked it up for like less than $5,000. He could sell it for twice his money easy, and if you really fixed it up, they go for 15 because they know the old ones are solid, they last. But the new one, meh, I wouldn't chance it unless it was dirt cheap and it still ran and shifted okay. Jeffrey Gonzalez says, Scotty, I've been watching your show. I want to get a 2022 Mitsubishi Mirage 5-speed trannies. Are they any good for long-term casual driving? Now, the Mitsubishis, there's no way in Hades that they'll last as long as a Toyota or a Honda. They're not built as well. If you can get it a lot cheaper than a Toyota or Honda and you're doing casual driving, you might be happy with it. But, and this is a gigantic but, if you're going to pay anything close to a Toyota or Honda product, forget it. Get a Toyota or Honda product. It'll last 3-4 times longer than Mitsubishi will. It just depends on if you're going to save a whole bunch of money and you can get it at a better price. It's casual driving. They can be okay cars. Randy Ramirez. Why doesn't air conditioning and vehicles work like air conditioning in houses or buildings? What's the difference? It's a very good question. Well, here's why. Okay, you got a house. It's a giant area that has to be cooled, right? So you want it cooled, but you want to do it efficiently without wasting a lot of energy. And a house generally is a house. It's got a roof. It's got windows. But you take a car. It's a small space sitting out in the sun. The sun's coming through all the windows. The infrared heat is heating the car up. It can be 145 degrees inside your car, not in your house, right? So car ACs have to cool down fast and keep them cool. You're in your house for hours and hours. You're sleeping for 8-10 hours. The car you're generally not in as long, so it's got to be cooled down quick. So it's a little bit more inefficient. You don't care in a car. In a house, if it worked that fast, your electric bill would be so high, it would be absolutely insane. So it's all a difference between being in a small vehicle you gotta cool quick versus being in a very large area that you want to cool and keep it cool at a good temperature. And it doesn't have the beating in heat like a car has. A house, a good one anyways, is insulated, right? A car really isn't. So there's a lot of differences. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.